So here we go. Your role in your organization's fundraising. And so we're going to talk a lot about the roles that board members, executive directors, or all senior staff leadership, okay, even non-development senior staff in a nonprofit organization, the roles that they can play, should play, the kinds of roles that you can expect them to be involved in, okay? So let me make this observation. You're probably not in the role that you're in because you are really excited and passionate about fundraising. Okay? In other words, the path to the chair of the executive director or the path to a board is generally not, man, I just love to raise money and I just wish I could find some place that would let me do it. It's usually, okay, the primary focus of your mission, and that's where it makes perfect sense that if you're a homeless shelter, you probably have great passion for the unmet need in your various communities that you might be serving, a school, or and likewise for whatever kind of mission is the primary focus of what your nonprofit is about. And then fundraising kind of comes along as this necessary, sometimes burden, right? It's something that has to be done in order for you to be able to do what you are truly passionate about. So why should every nonprofit leader care about fundraising? Well, some of this stuff is going to be pretty profound and basic to you, but if you are a senior leader in your organization, okay, or if you're a board member, then financial health is at least part your responsibility. Okay, it falls on the shoulders of senior leadership in every organization. Fundraising is what governs the growth of almost every nonprofit mission that exists out there. In other words, why don't you do twice as much work today in your communities? And the answer is, well, we don't have the resources that we need to do it. We need to hire more program workers, social workers. We need to hire more faculty. We need to have bigger space to accommodate more students, whatever the factor is. But generally, it's a function that comes back to saying, what is the hole, where's the log jam happening? Where's the funnel kind of clogging? And in most cases, it is a lack of funding, okay? And this is the profound question. If you are not concerned about fundraising, then who? Now, you may have a quick answer to that question, and it may be on this slide here, next slide. Isn't that why we have a development director? I mean, don't organizations hire development staff so that the rest of the organization doesn't really have to be worry about fundraising so much? In short, no. Okay, so just bear with me. A development director, yes, is important, and some of you or many of you are probably sitting in that chair, the director of development chair, or you're on the development staff of your organization. The purpose of a development director is to not relieve everyone else in senior leadership and the board of their fundraising responsibilities. It is to facilitate, to manage, to coordinate, and to engage all of those tools. That's the quick answer. So as the CEO of your organization, or as a board member of your organization, let's take a lesson from how the for-profit world operates. Okay, if I just pick a for-profit organization, a big corporation like General Motors, okay, some of you may know the CEO, may know the name Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors today. She makes a lot of money, okay? But let me assure you, Mary Barra has to be as concerned about getting her cars to market and the sales process as she does producing quality cars. There's two sides to her mission. For-profit companies provide products or services, right? It's the job of the senior leadership to ensure that that product is of quality or the service is being delivered in a quality way, but it's also the job of that CEO, board, and all senior leadership to bring that product or service to market and look after the financial side. It's not enough for Mary Barra to say to her board, hey, we're making the greatest car in the world, although our sales are in a huge slump right now, because the board's gonna look at her and go, fix it, Mary. You gotta spend more time on the sales side, perhaps. The same is true in nonprofit organizations, right? They have to pay, just like in the for-profit world, just like Mary Barra and General Motors, have to pay equal attention to the funding side as they do the side that they may be passionate about. Again, whether it's caring for the homeless or educating children in a unique way that your school might do, or whatever your mission may be. Every nonprofit has two sets of customers, okay? And the first is the one that is the most obvious, okay? And again, if you're a homeless mission, and I'm just going to use these same examples for the sake of explaining these points, if you're a homeless mission, okay, then your primary customer, the person that you are seeking to serve, are homeless women, men, and children, okay? But it's not the homeless women, men, and children who provide the funding. So now you have a completely different set of people that is your responsibility for identifying and bringing into relationship and helping them understand the unmet need in your community so that they will in turn fund it. So it's a different set of customers. And I know customers is a strange word. It's a secular term that we don't really use in the nonprofit world in most cases. But in this case, we should, because the term customer implies that it is incumbent on us to serve their needs. Yes, it is incumbent on us to serve our donors' needs, just as it is incumbent on us to serve the needs of the children in the classroom, or the homeless people on the street, or whatever your mission might be. It's our job as senior leadership to figure out how to bring those two customers together, so that ultimately we begin to solve problems that our vision and mission statement define what we are all about. So on the funding side, are some customers more important than others? Now, this is a dilemma that many organizations face, and let me just offer, as a consultant, most of my career working predominantly in the Christian faith-based world, this is a particular concept that many faith-based organizations struggle with. Are some donors more important than others? Well, you can see where we're going with this. The answer is yes, they are. Okay, they are, because you only have so much time, and the question is, who are you going to spend it with, right? Because they make a large donor can make a huge potential impact on your organization if you figure out a way to engage them. And because half of your job has to be looking after the fundraising or the financial side of your mission, then yes, you have to acknowledge that somebody that has the capacity to give significantly has to take on a certain degree of priority in your mind, as opposed to the person that might be capable of a very small gift. In short, you need all gifts of all sizes, but if, as the CEO or somebody in any C-suite in your organization, or a board member, you have to pay attention to the high potential that can come from engaging a significant donor. Wouldn't you expect Mary Barra of General Motors, and I assure you she does, probably spends a little bit of elbow rubbing time with General Motors' most important customers. If you were to take Avis Rent-A-Car, who buys thousands of General Motors cars every year to sit on their lots in their rental fleet, I assure you that Mary Barra probably spends a little time in direct relationship with the head of Avis organization, who buys a lot of cars from them. It makes sense, right? And it makes sense in the nonprofit world as well. More reasons to be involved in fundraising. Senior nonprofit leaders' actions, you set precedent for other people in your organization. People look to you for that example. And as you'll see in another statement here in a moment, that kind of underscores that. But again, setting that precedent is critical. There's no one in your organization that has more credibility than the head of the organization, so the CEO. But certainly as board members, you also carry a great deal of credibility. Other senior staff and leaders can as well. And so there's this understanding that, you've heard the expression, the best fertilizer for the soil is the boss's footprints. What that means is people perceive that those who are in charge are knowledgeable and probably should be paying attention to those donors who are particularly important. How can you expect others to do what you might be unwilling to do? In my career, and I've been doing this for almost 37, 38 years, something like that now, I can tell you that I've run into a handful of CEOs or executive directors who have said, I'm just not good at this, and I just can't see myself ever being involved. I'm not good at it, therefore I'm going to try to surround myself with people who can do it instead of me. And that's not a viable solution. So to the executive director that may be on this, I'm sorry, I don't have better news for you today, but you need to be involved in fundraising. You need to have a direct role in it. And if you're not comfortable with it or you don't feel that you're good at it, there are plenty of ways to solve that problem, okay, by getting some training, some guidance, some coaching to help you do it. But it's not a viable solution for you to not be involved in that kind of work. And the CEO is integral to setting the example for senior staff and other leaders in your organization, and certainly the board's involvement in this sort of thing. So we're going to talk through 5 ways, and I'll kind of get through these and leave plenty of time for questions. We'll touch on these for a little bit, but 5 ways for senior leadership to engage more deeply in fundraising. The first is to embrace and drive the development mission. Now, the development mission. What in the world is the development mission? It is the second mission that every nonprofit organization has, and many don't realize it. Yeah, you know what your primary mission is. It's on your website. It's defined under your mission statement heading. Okay, but you also have a mission to your support base. I'm going to be willing to bet that if you go to your website today and look at your mission statement, maybe you know it by heart, you probably don't mention the donor anywhere in that statement. Now, I'm not suggesting you should change it, but what I am suggesting is that you may develop at least an internal mission statement that defines the manner in which you engage the support base and help to identify and serve their needs and help them get out of it what they're hoping to get out of it as a donor. So if there is a second mission, okay, and if dollars equal mission impact, then it stands to reason that more dollars would equal greater mission impact, right? And that goes back to one of the dilemmas that we talked about earlier. What governs the growth of any organization? Almost every nonprofit organization in America is governed by a limitation of dollars coming in. And if those dollars could flow freely and come in, then there's virtually no limit to the kind of impact that you could have in your communities. So this is an important realization. More money equals more impact. It's a great message to send to your donors as well. So a clear donor mission or development mission would read something like this. Our customer or client, meaning the person that under our development mission that we seek to serve, is the donor. Okay, in this case, it's not the student, it's not the homeless person, it is the donor. Our mission is to serve their passions and interests and needs, okay, of the donor. What are they? How does our mission somehow enrich their life by serving those passions and interests? Our objective is ultimately to fully fund reasonable growth in our mission year over year, and in our primary mission, right? And so this is how you might articulate what that development mission looks like within your organization. If there's a second mission, there ought to be a statement that defines it. Here's an example of one. Okay, and we're going to send the slide deck to you if you're on the webinar today, but you're welcome to write this one down. I'll leave it up for a minute. This is just a kind of generic one that I just threw together for the sake of the slide deck. But your mission statement for development might read something like this: enriching the lives of our donors by connecting their hearts to the heart of our primary mission. Okay, and that speaks more to the means of or how you do the work of development. When I throw out the task sometimes to an organization to say create a development mission, what oftentimes comes back is to fully fund our primary mission, and that's not really, doesn't speak to how you do it. This speaks to the means by which you're going to carry out your development work, and it gives you a great lens through which you can evaluate all of your development activities. Okay, a second way for senior leaders to be involved in fundraising is to be in relationship with your most important donors. Okay, we hit on this a minute ago in the General Motors example with Mary Barra, CEO, and her involvement. We know that you have limited time. Okay, hopefully a chunk of your time, maybe half of your time, is committed to external relations of your organization. It should be in a perfect world, right? So you only have so much time. Should you spend it with the 5 nicest people, or the 5 people who could ultimately fund your entire mission? And the answer probably should be, or has to be, the second, the 5 people who could ultimately fund your mission. They may not be the most fun meetings. It may be challenging and difficult, It may challenge you in ways personally that you've never been challenged before, but it's the wisest thing to do for the sake of future mission growth. Most nonprofit organizations do a pretty good job of focusing on the bottom half of their donor pyramid. Okay, and this is what you see there is the bottom half of a donor pyramid. The untapped potential in every nonprofit organization is the top half of the pyramid, and there are relatively few organizations that truly are able to kind of dip into that potential. And the reason is they're limited primarily by their development activities, being event focused. Obviously, no one's event focused right now because of the COVID residual and all of that. But mass marketing, digital marketing, all important strategies, but not anything that we would define as highly relational. It is that one-to-one interaction that ultimately generates and produces the greatest potential in every organization. I've never run into one yet, and I've worked with some of the largest charities in America. I've never run into one that I didn't believe could probably double their fundraising revenue without finding another new donor. The greatest potential for growth is always in your current donors. And contrary to popular belief, it's not about finding the next 100. Don't hear me say that. Please don't hear me say that finding new donors is not important. It is. But that's not where you're going to truly grow from, at least next year or the year after. You always want to have a pipeline of new donors coming into the system. But where the vast majority of your growth will come from is by engaging current donors much more deeply into your mission. Go deeper with fewer is my slogan, okay? Deeper with fewer donors. Identify some who have the capacity to give. Try to find out, try to learn, discover their passions and interests. Show them how their previous gifts have impacted your mission. So even if somebody gives you $10,000 and they've been doing it for a few years, try this out. Try finding something in your budget from last year that you spent $10,000 on, and go back to them this year and sit down with them and say, hey, you gave us $10,000 last year and you told us to use it where we needed it, right? We did. This is where we used it, and this is what happened. You begin to exceed their expectations, okay, which is an important thing, because just because somebody says use this where you need it doesn't mean they don't want to know how you necessarily used it. So this is an important step, this third one, showing how previous gifts impacted your mission. I'm a big fan of asking permission to propose, meaning ask them if you can put a proposal in front of them for their involvement this year, based on what you know they connect with or resonate with in your primary mission. And then find something in your budget, that's the key, not on top of your budget or outside of the budget, okay, but within your budget that aligns with their passions and interests. And that's how you really begin to bring this deeper with fewer strategy, this highly relational strategy to life. In short, make it all about the donor, okay? It's really, it is a mindset, okay? And so many development operations are there to just simply fund the primary mission, and everything is about the primary mission. And I get that, because that's why you exist, is to serve homeless or educate children or whatever your mission is. But the development mission and strategy has to be focused on making it all about the donor and serving that second set of customers in the most transformational way. 3, ask your development director to use you. Now, you may already do this as a leader in my company. I know that if they leave it up to me to figure out how to do everything that needs to be done, I'm probably not going to figure it all out. I'm not going to make the time. And so I expect people in our sales area to tell me how I need to be involved in sales. Okay, in any nonprofit organization, the same is true. You don't want the CEO to have to figure out how to balance her or his time between the two. What you want is a development director to come in there and be chewing your ear off, saying, you need to do this, you need to see Fred, you need to see Liz, you need to see Barney, whoever it is. And you want that development director managing your time and utilizing you as the effective tool that you are. You are the most influential person if you're the CEO or the executive director. Board members, you are also incredibly influential tools. You need your development office or your staff to manage you Okay, they're not your boss, but you need them to manage you so that they can utilize you in carrying out their development plan and ultimately achieving the goals. Best practices. The top 30 donors to any organization should be in 2 relationships. Okay, if they are only held with a director of development or only held with the executive director, you've got all your important eggs in one basket. What happens if the old proverbial bus runs over one of those 2? Then do the relationships go away? Is there an awkward reintroduction to those donors? So it makes perfect sense that the top 30 donors, which in almost every organization represent a disproportionate amount of funding, that they would be in relationship with a director of development, a CEO, maybe even a board member. Okay, and any one of those 3 has access to that particular donor, and the donor is aware and in relationship with all 3. That's just prudent, wise planning for any organization. Expect the development director to manage and direct the activity of the CEO, anyone else in C-suite. If you've got a chief of operations that can be effective in fundraising, you've got a chief financial officer that can be effective in fundraising, whatever else you may be. If you're a school, maybe there are principals who would be great donor facing, but they're never going to initiate things on their own. Let the DoD engage them. Board members, expect to be engaged by the director of development. If the director of development simply says to the board, hey, we want you to be more involved in fundraising, you as a board member have the right to say, great, engage me, utilize me with donor relationships that you have. The CEO and other C-suite leaders have to make time on your calendars, even board members. If you are willing to be utilized, you have to block some time. Send the DoD a block and say, hey, I'm setting aside next Wednesday afternoon. If you can set some donor meetings up, let me know. Even if there's Zoom meetings, I'll jump on with you, and I will be that impassioned volunteer board member with you on those donor meetings. If you're needed to help secure an appointment, okay, in other words, if it's somebody that you know and you're in relationship with, then it is the director of development's responsibility to probably prod that to happen. So in other words, you look for development leadership, for development staff to ultimately have figured out, they're the only ones that wake up every day thinking about funding the mission. You need them to manage you through this process, and these are ways for that to be done. The development director should plan out development strategies, and most importantly, ensure that senior leadership are doing everything that they can to be effective in development. Okay. 4, own the strategic development plan. What in the world is a strategic development plan? Chances are you don't have one of those. You may have a development plan, and that development plan may be a calendar. It may be a one-pager that sort of defines what you're trying to achieve this year, but probably not anything on the scale of what a strategic development plan is. Okay, in short, it's something that every organization can benefit from, and we do other webinars on this topic alone, and it's a subject that we can get very deep into. But the idea is it should be a complete business plan, the buildup of how the development mission will be successful in achieving all of its goals from beginning to end, all of the resources needed, and so forth. It is the place where your vision and mission for development are spelled out and defined. It looks out probably at least 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer than that, so that you've got a point on the horizon that you're sort of fixed, and you're trying to navigate a path there over the next 3 to 5 or 6 or 7 years, or however time frame the plan may be. It becomes an important reference for benchmarking and tracking your progress. Okay, it's a step-by-step plan. It has, the tactical steps that are needed for you to be successful in funding your mission. And the vision and mission of development become the lens through which the senior leadership of any organization use to view all potential development activities. So if you remember, I'll say it again, if the development mission were the one that I had on a slide earlier, enriching the lives of our support base by serving their passions, interests, and needs and connecting their hearts to the heart of your mission, if that's your development mission, then that, and you use that as a lens to look at things, and somebody comes up with this crazy idea to add a new event to your calendar, like let's do a 10K race. Well, does that fit within our development mission? It probably doesn't, at least in the one that I shared with you. And guess what? It's probably not going to raise a lot of incremental funding either. And the most important thing that you can do, and just as I said, is where the greatest potential is the top half of the pyramid, and it's going deeper with fewer. So your development mission becomes a lens to scrutinize and look at all future development activities. It should ultimately be owned by the CEO, okay? Because the development director, and some of you are development directors, you only have one boss. At least you should only have one boss, and that is your executive director or CEO. You can't also have the development committee or the board as your boss, right? So the development plan has to ultimately be owned by the head of the organization. And that means there has to be involvement on the part of the CEO or executive director in the planning process to ensure that it's something that he or she can fully get behind. The last area is to challenge your board. And we know we have many board members on today, and so this will be completely relevant to how you are probably trying to answer this question. Expectations of the board, in short, leadership by example. If board members, if you expect the organization to reach out and connect with potential donors to support the organization, then you should be willing to do that as well. Okay, anything that you expect anyone in the organization to do, you should be at least be willing to take part in. And the more that you lead by example, the more that you'll see that that happening throughout your organization. One of the objections I get is this one: we're not a fundraising board. And let me just first of all acknowledge that most nonprofit organizations don't build their boards to be fundraising boards. Now, some of you do, okay? Some of you have board members on your board who are effective fundraisers, but few organizations truly build a board to be a fundraising board. What I would say to this in any organization, and I've been in front of plenty of boards before when somebody will raise their hand and say, Mr. Lehman, we're not really a fundraising board. My quick reply is, yeah, you are. You may not know it, but or you may not be very good at it today, but you are a fundraising board. And that's simply because you're the only board your organization has. Okay? If you don't do it, who else is going to do it? There is a role for board members. And if you are trying to be the very best board member to your organization, then fundraising has to be an element of that, because that is half of your mission. It's the half that none of us, we don't love it as much as we love our primary mission, but it's a necessary component of our mission. And the board has to embrace it, otherwise no one else will embrace it. Here's some guidelines for what an engaged board should look like. Number one, they should have already conviction for your primary mission. So I offer this first because, and you may be saying, well, of course, right? Except for, I can't tell you how many times we see other organizations will invite a board member to sit on their, invite someone to sit on their board who they hope will develop conviction for their mission over time. and that's crazy to me, because why would you want somebody who doesn't have conviction for your mission to be in a chair that is ultimately guiding it down the path that you're on? They should give of their personal resources. Hopefully every board member in a perfect world, every board member would give what they're able. Board members have all different abilities to give, and whether it's $100 or $100,000, okay? Everyone gives according to his or her means, but the point is everyone has to give, and giving time instead of money doesn't work. You have to give some money. Okay, and it's great if you can give time as well, but it's a combination of those things. Money is an important piece because you need many, many other people to give, and it's important for you to be able to say we have 100% participation from our board. This is my personal criteria that comes out in my counsel and work with many organizations, but I believe that every board member should probably rank your mission in their top 3 philanthropic priorities. And I think that that's a reasonable request, given that you're putting them in a seat that allows them to guide and steer your organization. They are your executive director's boss. Do you really want somebody in those seats who wouldn't say that this is at least one of their 3 priorities philanthropically? You would expect board members to introduce their networks, okay? Because if you're serving on the board as a board member today, probably the mission enriches your life. It stands to reason that this mission could also enrich the lives of your friends and family and acquaintances. Well, that's all you're being asked to do. Being asked to make some introductions. You can't make anyone give, but what you can do is perhaps at least get a hearing among some, in the hopes that maybe your nonprofit mission can also enrich their lives. You'd also expect board members to be involved as passionate or impassioned volunteers. What that really means is when a development director sits down and asks someone for money, to a degree, they're a hired gun, right? I mean, they're paid to ask people for money. So when you put a board member down in the same room, sitting next to the development director during a donor meeting, you can have the board member be more peer-to-peer to that donor and say, hey, look, let me tell you why I give to this organization. Let me tell you why this organization is so important to me and why I give my time to serve on the board. Just that explanation alone would change the dynamics of a donor meeting entirely. Okay, strategies to build an effective board. There are 3, and by the way, we are, as part of being on today, you're also going to get a tool that kind of helps you think through and work through this process. But going forward, as you think about how to strengthen your board or how you want to change the board in the future, it's much easier to do that over time as you bring on new board members, as opposed to talking to your board today and expecting there to be a dramatic culture shift or change overnight. So part of it is in the identification of board members. Now, what I'm not suggesting is that a board should be comprised only of fundraisers by any means. But if you're a board of 10, okay, it is reasonable to think that 2 or 3 seats on that board of 10 would be reserved for somebody who might have some strength or some skill to offer in the area of fundraising. Not all of them, but 3 seats. And when one of those people rotates off, you try to find someone to bring that same skill set to the board so that there is some fundraising expertise or some fundraising resource that is always present on the board, just like you might have an attorney on your board at all times, okay, or an accountant, so that you have people who bring certain skill sets and perspectives and how they look at things. The enlistment process is just as important. The manner in which you invite board members to sit on your board has everything to do with setting precedent of the kind of experience it will be, and then offering them some effective training for how to be a board member. I don't mean this to be insulting to any board members who might be on it today, but where do board members learn how to truly be effective nonprofit board members? It's a very different role than for-profit board members. Okay? And usually the only training that most board members have gotten is maybe by serving on another board, which may or may not have been good training. Okay? So it is important for each organization to have its own training and onboarding program for new board members. The last question I'm going to answer before I bring Shannon back up is, what some of you may have on your mind, which is, what is the role of leadership during a capital campaign? Okay, because some of you may be thinking or planning, and we expect 2021 to be a big year for capital campaigning, given how many kind of postponed their efforts coming into this fiscal year. Who conducts the capital campaign? Okay, this is kind of a quick answer, but in a perfect world, it is the CEO and the board with some support from development. Capital campaigns are not normally operated or run or driven by the development office. And the primary reason for that is you need annual fundraising to continue to be persistent, and even grow during a capital campaign. You need your development staff focused on just that, on continuing to sustain those relationships, to add more relationships, and continue to do the good work that they're doing to grow your annual funding. Don't fall into the trap, and this is counsel from Skylar Lehman coming to you right now. Don't fall into the trap of rolling your annual funding into the capital campaign. Okay, that's never a long-term solution. It's not good and healthy for your organization. Your annual giving will never come back completely as it should post-campaign. It's critical that you maintain your funding, and you need your development staff to continue to keep to remain persistent, keep the operating mission in front of your support base. Okay, the CEO and board are the chief ambassadors of your organization during a campaign. Okay, and that's exactly what it requires. It takes the highest profile leaders within your organization to sit and interact with potential investors, okay, in your capital campaign. And then you may use campaign counsel, which is who does the coordinating and guiding and training and providing of tools and structure and so forth that senior leadership would use to not only achieve your capital goals, but also to protect your annual funding. Okay, so how can you challenge your board? Get them some training. There's lots of great sources from training. I'm biased. I wish you would use our firm, Mission Advancement, to do your training. Call us, and we'd be happy to talk with you about that sort of thing. Establish clear expectations as you enlist them, future board members. Sometimes boards come to us and say, we just need to completely retrain our board. And sometimes the easiest thing to do is to sort of release the board and re-enlist them. Okay, and that doesn't mean you're not going to have the same people, but they go through a re-enlistment process, which allows them to kind of shift culture or change culture more suddenly. Build an effective development committee. I'm putting emphasis on the word effective. Lots of boards have development committees, and many of the development committees don't always know what to do. I mean, they meet, they look at the development activity, they report on development, but they're not necessarily engaged in the work of development, which is what you would want an effective development committee to do. And lastly, involve the board in a strategic development planning process. A strategic development plan that looks something like your strategic plan that you operate on the programming side, or that guides your primary mission. All right,